So I have just seen Bradley Cooper's latest film, Maestro, quite a divisive one coming out of all of the film festivals, and I do have quite a lot of thoughts towards this movie, and I cannot wait to talk about it with you guys. So let's get into it. If you don't know what Maestro is, more or less it is a biopic about Leonard Bernstein, directed by Bradley Cooper, starring Bradley Cooper and Carey Mulligan. And this is pretty much Bradley Cooper giving everything he has to trying to win an Academy Award, especially in acting. He's wearing prosthetic makeup at times. He has aged himself significantly through makeup. He is really committing to this role. There is all these stories about him taking 6 years to prepare for this 6-minute scene. And out of the festivals, the reviews were kind of lukewarm compared to what I was expecting, especially after seeing the trailer. And despite that reaction, this was still one of my most anticipated films of the year. I really love Bradley Cooper's work. I am a fan of his stuff. I really like A Star Is Born, his first feature film. So I really didn't have too many doubts with this film going into it. Now I do have to say that there are people that absolutely love it. There's a group that are giving this 5 stars and adoring the hell out of this movie. And there's a group that really does not like this movie and hates what it's trying to do. And I'm somewhere in the middle. I wanted to love this a whole lot more than what I did. There were a number of things holding me back, but there were some sequences as well that were absolutely enthralling, gave me chills, and were truly some awe-inspiring moments in the cinema. Tonally and stylistically, right off the bat, this film is completely different from A Star Is Born. There are almost no similarities here, apart from the fact that we are following someone that has a strong passion for music. That's kind of it, and there are some relationship drama there as well, but really in terms of its structure, its style, the characters that we're following, nothing that you saw from A Star Is Born really rears its head here. It is a completely different movie, so I do have to credit Bradley Cooper as a director for trying something completely different and bold. He's not just going to keep doing the same thing as a filmmaker, and I appreciate that. It seems like he's going to have a diverse catalogue of films, and this is his first step towards diversifying, and it is very interesting. This film is not for the people that loved A Star Is Born. This film is more for an art house crowd, people who really love some very technical filmmaking, but not something really engaging all the time and trying to give big crowd-pleasing moments. This doesn't have too much of that. It doesn't really want to indulge the audience that much. However, this wants to indulge the filmmaker a lot, and that's where some of my troubles with this film come in. There are so many stories about this film, and watching this, it really confirmed the fact that Bradley Cooper is just begging. He's on his knees begging to the Academy to give him an Oscar in something. When you watch this film, just so many moments from the bat, you're like, yeah, he's just checking boxes here. And it was very hard to ignore that, despite the fact that he is giving a really incredible performance. If you looked at it at its own merit, it might be his best. He's really trying to disappear into this role here. He is fantastic. His voice is completely different. As I said, he's wearing prosthetic makeup, and it's going through this man's entire life. You don't really see too much of Bradley Cooper, apart from the fact that he is trying so hard to go for an Oscar that it kind of loops back around, and all I notice at times is Bradley Cooper trying incredibly hard for this. And that was very distracting, especially in the first act. Those thoughts disappeared a lot as we progressed into the film, and I got eased into it a little bit more. But that first 30 minutes especially, I really felt like Bradley Cooper was just trying so hard to get an Oscar, and it feels disingenuous. You know, I don't need to have all of this showy stuff to see someone disappear into a role. One of the best films of the year in Oppenheimer had a brilliant central performance from Cillian Murphy, and yes, he does wear a little bit of makeup to age him up, but you can easily recognize that that's Cillian Murphy. However, I don't see Cillian Murphy in that role. I see Oppenheimer. And at times in this film, I didn't see Leonard Bernstein. I saw Bradley Cooper with a lot of makeup on, trying his hardest, and it felt a little bit distracting. Luckily, as I said, as I eased into the film a lot more, I was able to get really sucked into his performance. And I do think it's a great performance. There's no doubt about that. I'm not questioning that for an instant. It is going to be nominated for an Academy Award, and I think deservedly so. It is fantastic. But to be honest, going into the stuff that I really loved about this film was kind of just how technically flawless this was. If I was to rate this film purely off technicalities, this film might be one of, if not the best film of the year. It is gorgeous to look at. Technically, it is immaculate. The cinematography is so outstanding. The use of black and white with the color is so purposeful and looks so stunning. And this truly has some of the best editing of the year. There are just some really badass transitions in this film that was so seamless and just show you that already in his second film, Bradley Cooper really knows what he's doing as a filmmaker and has a clear and distinct vision. There are shots in this thing that are awe-inspiring, truly some of the best of the year. You see a little bit of one in the trailer where Carey Mulligan's watching him conduct. That gave me chills, that scene. It was so beautiful, the way it was handled and crafted. And there's a lot of this seamless editing happening in the background. Truly outstanding stuff. And I'm really excited to talk about this section. The whole scene that took 6 years to prepare for, it's a 6-minute long scene roughly. It lives up to the hype. I have to tell you, it is the best scene of the film. It is one of the best scenes of the year. This was the moment that I was just truly locked in and immersed in this Bradley Cooper performance. You feel so much, and he doesn't have to say anything. There's just such great camera work happening here. There's all of this grandiose scenery around him, but my eyes are just locked onto Bradley Cooper because he is just killing it here. Really wonderful. It left me speechless. I was, once again, had chills up my spine because of how mesmerizing it was and how much Bradley Cooper commits. Conducting just looks so incredibly cinematic, and this was a true testament to that. That scene is probably worth the price of admission alone. It really will be one that I would love to just constantly rewatch just because of the way it made me feel. Another fantastic lead performance is Carey Mulligan, who is trying to be the emotional heartbeat of this film. And she kills it. There's a great scene between her and Bradley Cooper that I thought was terrific. And she's also giving a really showy performance. She has a completely different voice. And I also have to say, the introduction to her character just took me back to the 1950s with the way that the camera moves, the focus of this shot. It really took me back to those times. And it was once again a true testament to Bradley Cooper as a filmmaker. I really cannot express enough how much of an interesting filmmaker Bradley Cooper is. But with that said, I do have to get into the things that hold this back for me, and that is the fact that while it is technically immaculate, I could go on for days about how technically brilliant this film is, it didn't really make me feel all that much. And that is a problem because I am someone who wants to feel something when watching a movie. That's why I'm going to the movies, to feel happy, sad, contemplative. I'm going through a whole wide range of emotions with all of these different films, and I want to feel that. Maestro, I almost felt nothing. It felt like a really pretty picture at times because I'm getting all of this grandiose scenery, beautiful moments, but once again, I'm not feeling anything. I'm not connecting to anything. And that is for a number of reasons. The first of which I think is just the way that this film is structured. It is much like the structure of a lot of biopics out there, even though it is quite different to many celebrity biopics because this wants to look at a more personal side of Leonard Bernstein. It's not all conducting the whole way through. It is more dissecting his relationship to his wife and the adultery that went on and who he is as a person. It really wants to look a lot more introspective than look at the more grand side of this man's career. And that's all well and good, but to do that, you need to make me connect to these characters. But it's kind of doing that while following a very similar structure to many other celebrity biopics out there where it's just a slice of life story. There's no real arc there. You don't really get full satisfying moments. It's just a bunch of scenes strung together with nothing really making you feel anything. They'll be explaining something that is significant to these characters, but I once again feel nothing because there's no build up there. There's no real payoff. So when we do have big emotional moments that the film's trying to go for, it doesn't really work because once again, there's no build up. There's just a lot of scenes happening that are really well shot, beautifully crafted, but are lacking something that will make you feel something. And because of that, I'm gonna say it, this film at times is boring. It's just a fact, I think. I don't think many people will go to this movie being absolutely engaged the whole way through. There was someone next to me in the theater that fell asleep. No word of a lie. I heard him snoring. It was kind of funny. And that's kind of what I'm trying to say here. There's moments here that just aren't interesting. And that's so disappointing because this film has all of the ingredients of a masterpiece, but just does not execute on that vision properly to become one. Technically, it's far better than A Star is Born. I don't even think it's close. But A Star is Born made me feel something. There's scenes in that make me tear up, that make me connect to the characters, and because of that, it's a far better film than Maestro because Maestro doesn't give me any of that. And that's a major problem that I have with this film and knocks it down quite a bit in my eyes, and in fact, doesn't really interest me to rewatch this again. I am glad I saw it. I did come out overall liking it and appreciating it. No doubt about it. I don't hate this movie by any means. I like it a lot more than a lot of stuff that came out this year. But to really elevate and become what I expected of this film, it needed to make me feel something, and it didn't. I think a lot of people as well will find it pretty hard to connect with Leonard Bernstein as a character in this film because Bradley Cooper kind of wants to have it both ways here. He wants to have Leonard Bernstein do a lot of acts that really hurt his reputation and make him quite unlikable at times and hurt people that seem like they have his best interests at heart. But then he also wants to show that he's actually a kind guy who has a lot of empathy and just made some mistakes. And because of that, people are going to be a little bit confused as to whether he's worth following as a character and worth empathizing with, because at times it just seems like it's very confused in what it's trying to do there. Now, I took it as, yes, he did a lot of things that hurt people, but he never really intended to do those things. He always was just a loving and caring person, as the film likes to portray it. And he just was very ignorant, and because of that, he hurt a lot of people in the process. And that's fine. I for one, don't really mind that aspect of the film. I do think it's quite well told, but I am just warning that a lot of you out there are probably not going to like following this character because of what he does in this film. And then there's the ending, which it has this big emotional moment, and then it kind of just stumbles to the finish line with a couple of scenes stitched onto the end that didn't really do too much for me, that didn't really help in communicating the full arc of this film that well. I really think it could have ended on the big emotional release and have one line or two afterwards and then that's it. but we just keep going on for a little bit in some scenes that just felt out of place overall. I do want to talk Oscars for this movie, but before I do that, I will give it a rating so all of you who just want the review can have that. This film to me is a 3.5 out of 5. I do think it's a good film. I definitely think it is technically immaculate. One of the best of the year. As I said, if we're just rating it based off that, this is a top 5 film of the year. Hands down. It is so incredibly crafted that it's hard to deny. It truly is. It takes you back in time. It really works well. Incredible editing, incredible cinematography, incredible sound. This film was made for a theater, and all of that is excellent. And I would recommend this film purely off the 6-minute scene. It was amazing. Honestly, once again, if I'm rating it that scene and just that scene, this is one of the best films of the year. That was truly a mind-blowing scene that you need to see it. Whether it comes out on YouTube later or you just watch the movie, just watch that scene, please. It is fantastic. But as I said, the fact that I just didn't really feel anything hurt this a lot. And that is what stops this from being one of the best films of the year for me. Okay, Oscar talk. I do think this has a chance in a number of categories. I do think for sure that Bradley Cooper is getting a nomination. I do think Carey Mulligan is getting a nomination. I think cinematography, sound, editing, all there for sure. Production design, maybe. It's not the most standout aspect of this film, even though there are a couple of moments that were kind of showy in that area. But those categories I mentioned, I think would be very hard to knock out purely off merit alone. I would probably put them in my own Academy Award nominations as we get even closer to the end of the year. But where this becomes fuzzy are the major categories. Screenplay? I don't know. I do think the screenplay might be the weakest aspect of this film personally, even though there are a couple of moments that did work. But this film is more powerful on the visual end rather than the dialogue and a lot of what the screenplay can provide. Directing is another tough one because, once again, it's more technically impressive than A Star Is Born, which didn't get nominated, but I do think A Star Is Born is a better film overall. So I'm really confused as to whether it does get a directing nomination. I think this film overall might be too mixed and might just miss out there. And Best Picture, I do see a world where it does squeeze in, especially now that we do have 10 nominees, so there is definitely a chance, and there are enough categories where you can distinctly pick out what it can get nominated for, where it does have a nice package to go along with a Best Picture nomination. But I do not think there is a chance in hell that it wins. I think it would be lucky and privileged just to get a nomination. And in terms of Bradley Cooper winning, it's tough. He is in a pretty stacked category, especially at the front end of it. He's going up against Cillian Murphy and Leonardo DiCaprio, and that is really tough. I do think the Cillian Murphy performance, at least in Oppenheimer, is stronger than what Bradley Cooper gives in Maestro. I do think there are a number of performances that I enjoyed a little bit more than Bradley Cooper's, but it is one of the most showiest, and that may be hard to deny. That's definitely why I think it's getting a nomination, but I don't think it quite does enough to get the win, which is crazy because Bradley Cooper is throwing the kitchen sink at this. Anyway, those are my thoughts towards Maestro. If you've seen the film, let me know what you think about it in the comments below. I know there's two wild sides to this, and me being in the middle might not be what you want to hear, but it's genuinely how I felt. But I'd love to hear what you think in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.